Right then, it is that time of year again. The 2022-23 predictions are here. 20 all the way up to number 1. Who is finishing where next season? Let's get into it. Right, let's just get straight into this. The relegation battle. Those 3 that are going down. In number 20, it's Fulham. I know they won the league last season, but Norwich win it every other year. They go down in bottom place. I think they're a good team. I just don't think they've got the quality to stay up. I know Mitrovic had that unbelievable 46-goal season, but he's just not going to replicate that in the Premier League. The strikers just don't tend to be able to make that step up. And if you're relying on one player to score you that many goals, I think you're going to lose a lot by coming up to the Premier League. I worry for Fulham. I think they'll go down. I think they'll finish bottom. 19th, I think, is Bournemouth. Again, another newly promoted side. Whilst I think they're a good team, I think they capitalised on the momentum of some other teams dropping off toward the end of the season. I think they're a good team. There's just better teams in the league. I think they'll come straight back down. In 18th, I'm going to go with Leeds. Again, they were hanging on for dear life last season. And I know we've talked about Bielsa being overrated. He's left now. I still think he was a good manager for Leeds. He obviously did good things getting them promoted. Jesse Marsch is a good manager. Gets unfair disrespect at times, but they've lost Rafinha. They've not replaced him adequately. I think this is Leeds' year to go back down. Some of that momentum that they've had over the last few seasons will just run out inevitably now. They've lost that manager that brought them back up. I think they're going to really struggle this season, Leeds. And unless they can really shore up that defence, they're definitely going down. So I'm going to put them in 18th.
Anyone who watches this channel and knows me at all will know my predictions in any front are terrible. Maybe like a broken clock is right twice a day. Maybe I can be right once a decade. I'm going to go with Bournemouth to finish bottom. Listen, just been promoted. Good team. Yeah, lots to like about them. Plucky little Bournemouth. Well, no, not plucky little Bournemouth. They've had a lot of money over the years. They're only a tiny club, but if you look at the money they've had to spend, it's much more than you'd expect for a club that size. And I just feel like teams that get promoted are always going to struggle. Yes, they've had that Premier League experience. It wasn't that long ago. They were in the top tier, but I don't know how much that's going to count for. And I just feel like they might struggle, so I'm going to put them bottom. Second bottom, I've gone with Brentford. Listen, I like Brentford. They're a good team to watch. I like Ivan Toney. I did like Christian Eriksen when he was there. And I think they surprised a lot of people last season. I just feel like this season might be a touch of the Sheffield Uniteds for them. It might be that second season syndrome where they struggle a little bit. They're also going to miss Eriksen, of course. So I've put them second bottom. Would love to be proven wrong on that front. And third from bottom, I've gone with Forest. Now, I love Forest to survive. I like Forest. They're a club that has won 2 more Champions Leagues than Manchester City. So they are a big club. There's no denying it. We've had some good players over the years from Nottingham Forest. Well, say some good players. We've had some duffers, the likes of Peter Davenport and Neil Webb, but we've also had Roy Keane, so there's a lot to like about them. Also, Brian Clough, who was, one of the great managerial geniuses of all time. But yeah, I just feel like they might struggle. Promoted clubs do tend to struggle. I don't know if Dean Henderson can help keep them up. Maybe. We'll have to wait and see. I also think they're going to miss James Garner, who was a big part of their promotion push. So that's my bottom 3. Bournemouth, Brentford and Forest. I've had a look here and I think this is where it's sort of tricky to predict in it, because bottom, mid-table, bottom half, that can change on one result. I mean, some teams, they're in a position right up until the last week of the season, and then one big result or one bad result, and things just change around. But I'll run you through the bottom half of the table, going down to the relegation spots.
So, in the relegation spots, I have gone for Fulham at the bottom of the table. I think, generally, Fulham are one of those yo-yo sides, aren't they? And they have brought in a few players, the likes of Andreas Pereira and co. Mitrovic was obviously on fire last season in a championship. But I do think they're probably going to go straight back down. So I've gone with Fulham. That might be a tap-in, though. Then I've gone with Leeds in 19th, not just because we all hate Leeds, but because I think this could be the season. I don't believe in the Jesse Marsch hype, if there is any hype. I just don't believe he's got what it takes. I think he could get sacked midway through the season, and it's whether Leeds have given the next man enough time and they pick the right man in next. Obviously, they've lost the likes of Calvin Phillips as well, who I think was a huge player for them, even though he had his injury problems. So I think Leeds could be maybe a surprise to go down this season. Then in 18th, I've gone with Bournemouth now. I just feel like they're going to be one of those teams that go straight back down again. I can't see many of the teams staying up that come up. It's going to be difficult for them to do that. Obviously, Bournemouth been playing good football. They were an experienced Premier League side in the past. But I just don't think they're going to stay up. So Bournemouth.
Right, Larry. Listen. Forget what the rest of them have been saying. Here's how the league's going to finish this year. Are you having this? Right, here we go. Getting relegated is Bournemouth and Fulham for sure. They are definitely going to be bouncing down. I think the one team that's going to stay up out of the bottom three, or the ones that have just come up, is Forest. And I'll get to Forest in a second. I think Forest are going to stay up. But I think Bournemouth and Fulham are going back down. I don't think they are equipped. Joining them, Southampton. Long overdue, if you ask me. Southampton going.
In at number 17, I've gone for Brentford just to edge out relegation and just miss out on that. But I think that would be good for them to stay in the Premier League for another season. I think Thomas Frank is a very good coach. Obviously, they've lost Christian Eriksen, who was a big factor in them staying up. They've still got Ivan Toney as we speak. If that changes, maybe this changes. But I think with Ivan Toney there, Thomas Frank there, Brentford should stay up.
Right then, in 17th, just fighting for that spot is Brentford. I know they finished strongly last season. I know they were a good team. They were hard to beat, but we see this so often where a team comes up, has some momentum, finishes in those mid-table spots, and the year after they really struggle. It's so hard to keep that momentum up year on year on year. We saw Sheffield United do it, get relegated in disastrous fashion the year after finishing a mid-table spot. I think Brentford are going to do the same or thereabouts, but I think they'll just about stay in the Premier League. I've got them in 17th. Then we've got Southampton in 16th, Everton in 15th, Forest, the best of the newcomers, in 14th. I think often the momentum of a playoff run is enough to keep a team, if you have a good start to the season, first 10 or 12 games, if you can win 3 or 4 of them and look to be competent and look to have a decent start, that can often do enough to keep you in the league for the rest of the season. I think Forest will be that team this year. Then in 13th, it's Crystal Palace. I like the way they play. I think Vieira has got a good squad there, some good players. But I just think you look through the rest of the teams in this sort of next mid-section of the Premier League table, there are just better teams than Crystal Palace. Whilst I think they're good, I still think they've got frailties defensively. I don't really like how they play defensively. I think they're going to struggle. Just in terms of personnel, I don't think it's quite there for them. So I've put them in 13th. In 12th, it's Aston Villa. Again, it's a toss-up. These mid-table spots are an absolute toss-up because they're often 1, 2, 3 points between 10th and 16th by the end of the year. So these can, all go one way or another. I just think Villa will have slightly more than Palace. Next up is Brighton again. Very much the hipsters' favourite with Graham Potter in there. They always underachieve. Well, at some point, that's just how good you are. You can talk about expected goals all you want. When you keep finishing, mid to low table, you're just a mid to low table team, aren't you? So Brighton, I've gone with 11th.
In 15th and 16th, I've gone with Aston Villa and Everton. Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard's clubs respectively. I just don't believe in either of them as managers, really. I think, the amount of money that Villa have spent, they've got some very good players on their books, the likes of Leon Bailey, the likes of Philip Coutinho, etc. But I don't think Steven Gerrard's the man, and I think them having spent so much money, the pressure's going to be on him to deliver. It's a competitive Premier League, as you'll see when we get to the top 10. So I think he's got it all to do, and I think he could be found out. Maybe they sack him, bring in another manager, he rescues them and saves them from relegation and all that. But I can't see it being a huge season for Steven Gerrard. Or Frank Lampard, I think is another one. You could argue whether Everton have done enough recruitment. Obviously, they've lost Richarlison, but I'm not impressed with Frank Lampard, and I think he'll be found out too. In at number 14, I've gone Southampton. Brighton at number 13 as well. I think those two clubs need to be doing better, really, when you look at what the resources they've got, the managers that they've got. Maybe they should be doing a little bit better. Could Potter be touted away from Brighton during this season? If a manager gets sacked elsewhere, wouldn't be surprised to see him linked with a move there. If Leicester sack Rodgers, etc. So you're looking at all those things and thinking, Potter could possibly leave Brighton if a better job is available. And Southampton have never really quite got it going consistently under Hasenhüttl. So I think it'll be kind of mid-table mediocrity for them. Still good for them, Brighton particularly, to be staying in the Premier League though. At number 12, and the surprise team of those that get promoted, I've gone for Nottingham Forest. Obviously signed Dean Henderson, signed Jesse Lingard as well. I think when you look at their team, they've lost Jed Spence, yes, and Jimmy Garner, who was pretty good for them last season. But it looks like they're putting the money in. They're in a historic club. I look at them as a Premier League club, really, when I think about them. Obviously, they've won the European Cup in the past and things. Could they be the team that surprises everyone? I think their home form, if they get that right, they could get a decent finish in the table. I expect Patrick Vieira to continue impressing as manager of Palace, so I've put them in at 11th, which will be a good season for them, innit? They're usually, being predicted to could possibly go down, or they have a part in the season where they look like they're going down. I think they'll be safe throughout most of this season, and I think Patrick Vieira will continue to impress at Palace. They've got a lot of good young players coming through as well, Elise, Eze, etc. So they'll be an exciting team to watch.
So in 11th, I've got Leicester. 12th, I've got Southampton. 13th, I've got West Ham. 14th, I've got Wolves. 15th, I've got Leeds. 16th, I've got Fulham. 17th, I've got Everton. I'll explain my thinking there. Everton's probably a bit of a surprise. People go, Everton again, right near the relegation fight? Yeah, I think they will be. They've not had a great pre-season. I don't think they've tore up any trees in the transfer market. And I think there's a massive question mark about Frank Lampard and his capability when it comes to football management. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Everton are involved in another relegation scrap, and I wouldn't be surprised if they just about get out of it. The other big surprise when you look at that might be West Ham in 13th. Finished 7th last season, a very good season for him. Are they going to drop down? I think they might struggle. I think they might. I think it wasn't, a perfect season by any stretch for them last season. Yes, 7th was a great finish, but there was quite a few results where you go, ooh, ouch. And I just wonder whether they've got one or two players who may not be able to live up to the expectations they did last season. You look at some of the players they've got. Look at Mikel Antonio, for example. He's the wrong side of 30. Nothing wrong with that. He's still a young man. Has purple patches, but can you keep relying on him? I'm not so sure. I just feel this season, 13th isn't terrible for West Ham. I'm not trying to belittle them. I think they're always going to be a club that is, if they're safe in the Premier League, that's decent for them because they haven't got loads of money to spend. I know they have spent some money, though. They're not short of spending money, but they're not like one of the big boys when it comes to transfers. So I just feel they may suffer a little bit of that expectation, teams being up for it, teams knowing that West Ham have had 2 decent seasons now, and that could knock the wind out of the sails a little bit, so I'm putting them a bit further down. I think the other teams, they're going to be there or thereabouts, aren't they? Fulham to survive, but it could be any one of the promoted teams that stays up.
Narrowly escaping, I've got Brentford. In 16th, I've got Leeds. 15th, I've got Forest. I think Forest are going to bounce in. I think Steve Cooper's a hell of a manager, and I think he's going to keep them up. And I think they look like they're doing some decent business. So I think Forest just stay up. And then it starts getting a little bit interesting, I would say. Everton, I see just being languishing down there a little bit. And I think Lampard gets the bullet pretty early doors. And then Brighton, Palace, Villa, Wolves is my bottom 10. Any questions on that?
In 10th place, it's Wolves. Again, it's all within 3, 4, 5 points, all these teams from each other. I just think Wolves defensively last season was so good. I think not conceding goals is a better foundation to do well in the Premier League than scoring loads of goals. I think, you're better off having a 6-goal difference, but you conceded 25 goals, than having a 6-goal difference and you conceded 50 goals. Newcastle is another one, snuck up the rankings a little bit, up into 9th. They were really good after Christmas, and I don't think that's going to be enough to push them up to, European spots. Some people talking about Champions League, sort of dark horses for that. Absolutely not. They haven't strengthened enough in the summer so far, at least. I think they're a good side, top half team, but only just. West Ham up in 8th, fighting for those European spots. I just don't think they'll get it. I think, again, they've got a good manager, they've got a good system, they're difficult to beat. United always seem to struggle to beat them, especially at Upton Park or, the Olympic Stadium that they play in now.
In at 10th, I've gone for Leicester now. Obviously, Leicester are a team that have done pretty well under Brendan Rodgers, winning the FA Cup and challenging for 4th spot, 3rd spot in recent times. But last season wasn't very good. As it stands, they've signed nobody. There's possibility that James Maddison will leave. They've let go of a few other key players, Kasper Schmeichel, etc. So you're looking at Leicester City and you're thinking, what's going on with their recruitment? It doesn't seem right. Maybe you could even see them finish lower down this table. Potentially Palace could finish above them. Brighton could finish above them potentially. Now, obviously, Brendan Rodgers is still a good coach. They've still got some useful players there. But I imagine it will be a difficult season for Leicester this season. And a mid-table finish is probably the best they could expect. In 8th and 9th, I've gone for Wolves in 8th, Newcastle in 9th. Then that'll be a good season for Eddie Howe. It'll be interesting to see, when the pressure comes on from buying players, as they inevitably will over the next few transfer windows. It'll be interesting to see how Eddie Howe gets on with the pressure and the expectation that will come with spending that money. Because obviously he is a good coach, but is he a coach that can get them into those European spots and get them, potentially fighting for like a Europa League or getting into the Champions League spots? Where the expectations will go to in the next year or two, I don't know. But I think he'll get them quite high up the table, possibly fighting for a Europa League spot, maybe just missing out this season. But I think it could be a good season for Newcastle and Eddie Howe, and they could finish around 9th. Wolves, expect them to continue where they left off. Maybe they'll make a few more signings. They've held on to Neves and Moutinho for up until now, which is good for them, particularly Neves. But Neves could potentially leave back end of the window if United don't get Frankie de Jong. Could he be someone that we look at? So you're looking at Neves, Moutinho, some of their key players in there, still there at the moment. So I think Wolves could continue to do well, and their recruitment's usually good.
I've got Palace in 8th, I've got Brighton in 9th, and I've got Newcastle in 10th. Newcastle have done well since the money's come in. They've spent well. Eddie Howe's done a decent job, and I think that's progression. I think that getting to 10th, I know it's only up one spot from where they finished last season, but I just feel that if they sort of are around mid-table throughout the season rather than being in a relegation fight and moving up the table, that is a bit of progression. And I just feel like this might be a season where Newcastle properly consolidate and then they build. And then the season after this one is when they start moving up the table, going for the Europa spots, and then after that, Champions League. And then after that, I think inevitably they're going to win the Premier League eventually because of the money they got. I just think that's how it's going to work out. City are a smaller club than Newcastle, and look what they've done since the money come in. It happens. You could even argue that Chelsea are actually, in terms of fan base, smaller than Newcastle, and look what they did when they got money. So I wouldn't be surprised if in 4 or 5 years we see Newcastle as Premier League champions, but it ain't going to be this season. Going up to the Europa spots. So in 5th, I've got Chelsea. 6th, I've got Arsenal. 7th, I've got Villa. I think these teams, it's paper-thin margins in it. I just think Arsenal will just Arsenal again. Chelsea's probably the surprise one. Most people think Chelsea are going to finish in the top 4. I'm not so sure. I think this might be a bit of a surprise season for Chelsea. I know they've brought in some good players. They've got likes of Koulibaly, they've got likes of Sterling, for example. But I just don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. This is my... Can I have an amnesty for a prediction? Can I just predict something a bit left field? And don't clip it up, even though you all will. I wouldn't be surprised if Tuchel ends up leaving before the end of the season. There, I've said it out loud. I'm going to get clips up and hammered when Chelsea win the treble.
Leicester in 9th. A lot of people I've seen on their predictions have got Leicester a lot lower than that. But I think there's some quality within that squad still. And I think if they get a bit of fortune with injuries, I think you're going to see Leicester doing some bits again. And by bits, not being 14th. And I think 9th is probably the limit. 9th or 10th, I could see them. Wolves could end up a little bit above them a little bit, but I'm thinking, 9th. Wolves and Leicester could be interchangeable, but I don't think there's much on it. Then I've got Arsenal, and everyone's like, oh, but they've just signed Gabriel Jesus. Gabriel Jesus is gash, lads. Let's not pretend otherwise. And last year, they came 5th. We're playing 1 day a week. Now they've got Europa League football. We know the grind that puts on you. And I'm going to say it. I'm saying it. Their squad is not equipped to deal with Europa League football and Premier League football. And you're going to be like, what? So United's is? Well, no, but I'm an optimist, so allow it.
Just sneaking into those Europa Conference spots, we've got Leicester in 7th. They've not strengthened over the summer, but they've got a good manager. And I just think they'll have enough. They've been a quality team for the last 3 or 4 years. I know they dropped off last season, but they could be. Leicester are one of those teams where I wouldn't also be surprised if they finish 15th and there's a real meltdown. They lose the manager, they make a mistake in who they're replacing with, and they could be a team that are fighting for relegation next season. But I just think they've done it year in, year out for the last 3 or 4 years. And obviously before that, winning the league as well. They won the FA Cup a couple of seasons ago. They're a good team who had a bad year last season. I think they'll get in the Europa Conference spots next season. Up there with them is Arsenal. I think they've improved, but they haven't improved enough. And I think the only reason they got near to the Champions League spots last season is because they didn't have European football and because Man United completely shit the bed. In 5th, then, it's Chelsea. If Abramovich was still there, I would put money on Thomas Tuchel being the first manager sacked this season. I don't know how their new owners are in terms of how strict they are, how ruthless they are with their managers. They've had an awful pre-season. They've been terrible in the transfer market. All of their targets have gone to other clubs. They've lost plenty of good players, especially defenders, which is one of Chelsea's sort of strongest suits. They're always good defensively, and that's their sort of basis that they build from.
In at number 7 and getting a European spot, West Ham. Now, obviously, it'd be a little bit more difficult for them this season, but I think they've got a good balance to their squad. They've brought in a striker that will play up top for them in Scamacca, obviously not just relying on Mikel Antonio. So if he does well, then you could see West Ham doing well. David Moyes is doing well there. So I imagine they'll be in and around those European spots and possibly grabbing the last one. In at 6th place, I've gone for Arsenal. A lot of pressure would be on Mikel Arteta this season. Spent a lot of money again, one of Europe's biggest spenders again for the 2nd season running. And when you're looking at that, he's got to start delivering. Now, they finished 5th last season. Arsenal and their fans and their expectations maybe now that they'll go for 4th. I can't see that being the case, and I think it'd be another Europa League spot for Arsenal. In at 5th, now Chelsea at the moment, transfer window, they've brought in Raheem Sterling, who I think could be a good signing for them. But they've also lost a few key players as well, particularly in the defence. They've brought in Koulibaly. Now, if Koulibaly and Sterling hit the ground running, then Chelsea might be okay. But I think it'll be a season of chopping and changing for them. Maybe they'll get a few deals done towards the end of the window, as you'd expect Chelsea always do. But it's going to be a difficult season. And I think if anyone misses out on the top 4 from the teams that finished there last season, I think it could be Chelsea.
In 7th, then, I think Newcastle, and that's a hell of a leap from where Newcastle finished last season, but I think there's a lot of momentum, and even though they've not done a million different signings, I think what they have done is invest massively into the back room, and I think that's going to be a huge positive for them as they kick into this season, and I think there's a bit of momentum about the club, and that's going to see them finish high. Maybe 7th is a little bit giddy, but you get what I'm scratching at. West Ham 6th. I think if they can keep hold of Declan Rice, that's where they'll finish. They've invested all right. They've now built a little bit of a squad up. I'd like to see some youngsters coming through because I know they've got a decent academy there at West Ham, and I think that they could be a decent little setup there. But I think 6th is probably the limit of where they're going to go. I don't see them finishing 5th or into the top 4. I think 6th would be the ceiling for West Ham. And this is the big one, innit? United and Chelsea. Who's going to drop out or get into the top 4? Because I think everyone here should be agreeing on who the top 3 are, if not the correct order of the top 3. And I'm going with Chelsea in 5th. I feel like there's a bit of panic about Chelsea at the moment, and I feel like it's got a bit of a vibe of the wheels coming off it just a little bit, which means I've got United finishing 4th. And it might be by the skin of our teeth, and I might be wrong, and Europa League might fuck this up, but I'm always going to go in as an optimist, and I am completely unapologetic about that.
Into the top 4 spots then, the Champions League spots, Manchester United in 4th place. I think people forget that a competent Manchester United who are playing with confidence, who are playing with energy and who are playing like an actual team, finished in the top 4 comfortably the last 3 years. That it's almost as though we have one bad season and people think United are the worst team in the league all of a sudden. I think Man United will finish top 4. I think 4th is probably the best we can hope for, unless Spurs have an underwhelming season. I can't see us finishing above City and Liverpool, but I think 4th place, if this team gels the way it looks like it might, and it plays to its level, United are easily the 4th best team in England, and we've also got a very good manager as well now who can get us into that top 4 spot. I'm going to go 4th for Man United. It's not as good as last season when we all predicted we were going to finish 1st, but I think it's realistic. Number 3, I've gone with Spurs. It annoys me to say this, but Conte is obviously a very good manager, and he's the only reason I'm putting them up there. I think they've signed a couple of good players. I think a couple of them are slightly overrated. I think Bissouma's a good player, not a great player. Richarlison, I think, is a very good signing for them. And obviously Conte is the X factor there, where I think he'll get the best out of this team. I don't think it's going to be enough to be challenging Liverpool and City, but I think he will get what anyone could get out of this squad.
3rd, I've got Spurs. I think Conte, a full pre-season, made some good signings, solid signings likes of Bissouma and Spence and players like that. Makes a lot of sense for him. They've also got in Harry Kane and Son two pretty much world-class strikers as well. So I think with Conte, and I'm a big fan of him, I think he's a very, very talented manager. I think he'll get him to top 3, I do. Fourth, I've gone for United. I think we can get into the top 4. And I think if we do get top 4, that is going to be massively underrated. I think if you look at what Erik ten Hag's inherited here, we've lost a load of players in the likes of Mata and Matic and Pogba and Cavani and Lingard. I know some of those don't always play, but some of them do. I don't think at the time recording this, we've tore up any trees in the transfer market. Decent signings, not amazing ones. So I think he's been a little bit shortchanged on that front. And I just feel like we're a club that has been in turmoil for the last sort of 6 months. So he's got a lot to sort out. So, plus there's the Ronaldo situation. So I think fourth, getting into that Champions League spot would be a phenomenal achievement. I sound a bit Jose Mourinho there, don't I? But yeah, I think he can do it because I think he's a very, very talented manager. And I think if he does do that, he deserves a lot of credit.
In at number 4, I've gone for Manchester United. Now, this is a little bit optimistic at this moment in time. We haven't signed Frankie de Jong. So this is with me thinking, surely Frankie de Jong eventually signs, right? If Frankie de Jong signs, I might even start saying we're winning the league. But right now, I'm going for Manchester United to grab that last Champions League spot and get 4th. Hopefully win a trophy elsewhere in the Cups. That'd be a good season for us. If we got Champions League football 3rd, 4th, and got a trophy, I think that'd be a great season for Ten Hag in his first campaign. We need to do it, though. And the pressure's on to get a few more deals done in the transfer window. 3rd, I've gone for Spurs. Now, I could see this going one of 2 ways. Either amazingly, and Conte potentially challenges for the league with this Spurs team. But on the flip side, you look at their signings, and on paper, it looks amazing. Jed Spence, Richarlison, Bissouma, etc., Perisic. But Perisic is about 63. Richarlison isn't going to be starting for them week in, week out. Could that become an issue as the season progresses? Bissouma, okay, I think that's a very good signing. Jed Spence is a young player. But who's the other one? Fraser Foster in goal. So while their window looks good on paper, I don't, it could go one of 2 ways. I think Conte, this will be his best season at Spurs before he eventually gets sacked and pulls his hair out. So I'm going to go for them to be 3rd. But if United get their business done right between now and the end of the window, United 3rd.
Spurs are finishing 3rd. I think they've done really well. With Conte, you expect them to compete, and some of the signings that they've made are really, really astute. So I think Spurs are going to be 3rd.
And then the top 2, annoyingly, I think they picked themselves at this point, bar a sort of, injury meltdown that Liverpool had a couple of seasons ago, or one of City's off years. I think it's between these 2, and I've gone with City to win the league and Liverpool to come 2nd. City just seem to have the number on them, barring that one season where, it was all behind closed doors and Liverpool didn't have any pressure on them. City tend to win the league, don't they? So I think on any given season, you start with City at number 1 and then try to convince me of anything other than that, unfortunately. And Liverpool haven't done enough to convince me that they will overturn them. My only worry is, and I say it's a worry because I'd rather City won the league than Liverpool won the league, is I'm not sure Haaland is going to be the player people think he is straight away. I don't think Haaland is going to continue this goal-a-game rate that he's been on for his whole career in England. I think it's a different style. I think that sort of big, long-legged, slightly lumbering striker, whilst there has been a bit of a renaissance for that kind of player across Europe, we haven't really seen that to any degree of success in the Premier League over the last 3 or 4 years. Lukaku at Everton was the last time we really saw that kind of powerhouse striker, put up massive numbers in the Premier League, and even then he wasn't the top goal scorer. So I think Haaland might be in for a rude awakening. However, I think Núñez might be the same at Liverpool. I know they're not exactly the same type of player, but much more of a target man than both teams have been used to playing with in recent seasons. That could maybe open the door for a sort of a 3rd title challenger, but I just think the rest of the squads will be too good.
In at number 2, I've gone for Liverpool. Holding on to Mo Salah could prove, vital for them. Obviously, losing Mane could be an issue, but I think even with losing Mane, you expect Núñez, even if he doesn't do amazingly well, to get at least 10 goals in the league. You'd expect them to add a few more goals, Jota to improve, etc. So even with Salah missing out, so Mane being sold, I still think Liverpool, it's all about Jurgen Klopp there. And I think they'll be the best of the rest, although I don't think it'll be as close as it was last season. Because in first, I've gone for Manchester City, unfortunately. And less said about that, the better. Now, hopefully, United sign Frankie de Jong, Cisco. we sign all these players. Yeah, we sign another right back, and I'm fully on train. I've 21 is coming, but right now, without that business being done, the best I think we can hope for is 4th. And unfortunately, it's going to probably be another one of those seasons of hoping Liverpool don't win the league. Soon though, Ten Hag's bringing it home. Trust me.
I don't think there's much in this between City and Liverpool. And I've and ahed and I've gone back and forward. And I can argue both sides of this. In my head, I don't know if I'm putting too much emphasis on the number 9 position. And I think Darwin Núñez isn't going to be anywhere near as impactful as Erling Haaland. But I think everything else going forward for them, this is going to hurt, man. I think Liverpool win it and I think City are second. And I think Liverpool draw with us on 20 titles. Which means we've got to get our fucking act together quick if we're going to turn this around. That's what I feel then. Liverpool, City, Spurs, United, Chelsea, West Ham, Newcastle, Arsenal, Leicester, Wolves in 10th, Villa 11th, Palace 12th, Brighton in 13th, Everton 14th, Forest in 15th, Leeds, Dirty Leeds in 16th, 17th, by the skin of their teeth, Brentford, relegated, Southampton, Fulham and Bournemouth. What do you reckon of that?
Top 2 then. Second, I've gone with the Scousers. I was tempted to get carried away with their emphatic win in that glorious triumph that is the Community Shield. But I think it's going to be close, and I think City, with their experience, with the Pep Guardiola factor, I think slightly has the edge over Klopp in terms of league anyway. I think they'll get over the line. I think, unfortunately, City will make it 3 in a row, but that's marginally better than the Scousers catching us on Premier League titles, or on titles, I should say. So, yep, I've gone a 1-2 of City and Liverpool. Not a great end to the season, but hopefully we'll make up for it by winning the FA Cup, the League Cup and the Europa League, so it'll be all about Manchester United at the end of the day. Those are my predictions. You've heard from Stephen Howson, you've heard from Adam McCullough, you've heard from Joe Smith. Let us know your predictions in the comments. Get involved. Tell us where we're going right or going wrong, is probably the case with my lot. Don't forget as well to hit like, share and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.